In Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock, standing tall on the revered Temple Mount, witnessed a terrifying event, stirring a global crisis. This holy site, significant to Jews and Christians, now holds unforeseen implications for Israel's future and biblical prophecies. These recent events at the Dome of the Rock demand our attention as we aim to uncover the far-reaching consequences that could shape the course of history. So join us in this video as we delve into the details of this shocking incident and explore its potential impact on the region's peace and stability. Let's start with the significance of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is special to Jews, Muslims, and Christians, mainly because of the Temple Mount, a sacred hill for all three religions. However, this holy site is also a source of conflict, with both Palestinians and Israelis claiming it as their own. The tension has been growing for years, and it reached a critical point in 2022 when a series of attacks resulted in the death of 17 innocent Israelis, marking the worst bloodshed since 2006. Recently, a deeply disturbing event unfolded at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, part of the Dome of the Rock, during the holy month of Ramadan for Muslims. Some Palestinians, wearing masks and having stayed overnight in the compound, initiated a confrontation by throwing stones, firecrackers, and other objects at Israeli police officers. The Israeli police responded with tear gas, stun grenades, and batons, resulting in a fierce clash. Meanwhile, in the chaos, masked Palestinians retreated to a mosque within the compound, locking themselves in while persistently hurling stones. This incident added a layer of intensity to the ongoing struggle for control over this sacred site. Chaos at the mosque. After the confrontation began, the Israeli police didn't step back. They rushed into the mosque compound and arrested the people who had barricaded themselves inside. But it wasn't smooth. About 160 Palestinians got hurt. Among them was a guard who got shot in the eye with a rubber bullet. Shockingly, 4 women, 27 children, and even a journalist were hurt. Some police officers got injured too, one of them seriously. This chaos erupted even though there was an agreement before. The police and the Al-Aqsa compound authorities had agreed that nobody would stay overnight during Ramadan. So why did the Palestinians break this agreement? Why did they take such risks with their lives and others? The answer lies in their fear. Palestinians fear that if the Israelis take control of the site, they might get kicked out from a place they believe is holy. But is this fear reasonable? Is all this violence really necessary? Can this conflict be solved peacefully? To get answers, let's understand why this place matters so much to both groups, the Jews and the Muslims. The Temple Mount is super important to both religions. It's not recent. It goes way back to around 1000 BC when King David, the king of Israel, took over Jerusalem and made it his capital. He wanted to build a temple there to keep the Ark of the Covenant safe. The Ark was a sacred chest holding the 10 Commandments. So, let's talk about the historical significance of the temple. Long ago, King David wanted to make a special place for worship. He chose Mount Moriah, now known as the Temple Mount, where the temple was supposed to be built. You can find this story in a book called 1 Kings. His son, Solomon, took over and built the temple. It was incredible, took 7 years to finish, and became a central place for worship and sacrifice. But after Solomon died, things changed. The kingdom split, and later on, the Babylonians attacked, destroyed the temple, and forced the Jews to leave their home. It was a really sad time for them. The Jews didn't lose hope. They went back and rebuilt the temple, but sadly it was destroyed again, this time by the Romans in a big war in 70 CE. Since then, the temple hasn't been rebuilt. But there's a part left, the Western Wall, also known as the Wailing Wall. It's super important for Jews. They go there to pray and feel close to their faith. For Muslims, this place is called Haram al-Sharif, which means noble sanctuary. It's the third holiest site in Islam after Mecca and Medina. They believe it's where the Prophet Muhammad went to heaven during an event called Isra and Miraj. It's a really big deal for Muslims because it shows how close the Prophet was to God. To remember this, they built the Dome of the Rock. Now here's the problem. Both Jews and Muslims care about this place. Both groups have a strong connection to it and want a say in what happens next. For Jews, this is where they hope to build the third temple. They think it's a crucial step for the Messiah to come. The centuries-old tension. Now, we've got a big question on our hands. Who rightfully owns this site, the Muslims or the Jews? It's a tricky question without a simple answer. But to understand it, we need to take a journey back in time, digging into history and peeling back the layers of this ongoing conflict. This tension didn't just pop up overnight. It has deep roots, going back centuries. Let's rewind to the year 614 CE, when the Sasanian Empire invaded and took control of Jerusalem. This invasion shook things up big time. It changed how the city was ruled and messed with its religious and cultural scene. Jerusalem was not the same anymore. But the story didn't end there. The Byzantine Empire wasn't cool with how things had changed. In 629 CE, they fought back and reclaimed Jerusalem from the Sasanians. With the Byzantine rule, Christian authority was back in the picture. The religious scene in Jerusalem shifted again, and you can imagine tensions were running high. Now fast forward to 638 CE. Jerusalem found itself under the Islamic Caliphate led by Umar. This power shift brought a new chapter to the city's history. The religious dynamics were on the move once more. Islamic rule and the Crusader trouble, shaping Jerusalem's destiny. Moreover, back in the day, things took a huge turn. Muslim rule took charge in Jerusalem, and it left a lasting mark on the city's culture, architecture, and religion. The Muslim presence became a vital part of Jerusalem's identity. Life under Muslim rule was buzzing with energy. The city became this thriving hub of Islamic civilization, with amazing buildings popping up everywhere, like the famous Dome of the Rock. But in 1099 CE, everything flipped when the Crusaders barged in during the First Crusade. Suddenly, it was all about Latin Christian rule. This change brought some major shakeups to the city, both in how things were done religiously and socially. The Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem was born, steering the city in a whole new direction. Then, in 1187, a game-changing moment occurred. Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, swooped in and snatched Jerusalem away from the Crusaders. This victory turned the tables, putting the city back into Muslim hands. Now let's fast forward to 1229 to 124. The Crusaders, not willing to give up, thought they could grab Jerusalem back not once but twice. In 1229, Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II struck a deal with Ayyub's Sultan al-Kamil. The deal was supposed to give the Holy Roman Empire control, but it didn't quite work out as planned. Jerusalem's ongoing turmoil. For a moment, the Christians had a brief moment holding the reins, but it didn't stick long. The Muslims rallied back, recapturing Jerusalem in 1244 at the Battle of La Fourbi. It was like a back-and-forth game, a real tug-of-war. Things got interesting in 1250 when Muslim rulers decided to do something bold. They tore down the city walls on purpose. Why? To weaken Jerusalem's defenses, making sure the Crusaders couldn't just stroll back in. They were playing the long game. Then, in 1260, the Mamluks took charge after defeating the Mongols. Jerusalem fell under their rule. Boy, did they make their mark. They had a strong grip on the city, wasting no time in making administrative changes and starting big architectural projects. They wanted Jerusalem to show off its power and influence. But wait, in 1517, the Ottoman Empire stormed in, led by Sultan Selim I, taking Jerusalem from the Mamluks. They, too, left their mark, especially Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. Between 1538 and 1541, he went all out, restoring Jerusalem's walls. He aimed to create a lasting legacy. The Ottoman Empire's influence was huge, but as history goes, nothing lasts forever. Despite their efforts, their rule eventually faded away. So after World War I, the Ottoman Empire fell apart, and the British took charge under a thing called the British Mandate. It didn't last long, though. Further, in 1948, Israel said, "We're independent." But that started some serious fights with the Arab communities. Wars broke out, and Jerusalem was split between Jordan, East Jerusalem, including the Old City, and Israel, West Jerusalem. Getting to holy sites like the Temple Mount became a real challenge. Then, in 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel took control of East Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. But they tried to be careful. They let the Islamic Waqf handle the site but kept security control. This move, however, added more tension, with both sides saying, "It's ours." So that's where we are now. A long history of takeovers, shifts, and conflicts. It's like a big tangled web of events and emotions. the Dome of the Rock. Now let's talk about the Dome of the Rock. It's a massive architectural wonder that means a lot to Muslims. This impressive dome was built by the ruler Abd al-Malik between 685 and 691 CE. How do we know that? There's an inscription inside the dome that tells us the exact date it was finished. It says 72 AH, which lines up with 691 to 692 CE in our calendar. This dome stands tall on a big platform and totally rules the skyline with its octagonal shape and shiny gold roof. It's about 65 feet in diameter, sitting on a circular drum supported by 16 piers and columns. Inside, there's a circular arcade with 24 piers and columns surrounding a sacred rock, partly exposed and protected by a railing. There's even a staircase leading to a natural cave under the rock. The outer walls are also octagonal, each about 60 feet wide and 36 feet high. They've got windows that let in natural light. Now, what makes it even more special? Well, it's all decked out with amazing mosaics and metal plates covering both the inside and outside. These mosaics are something else. They're like the ones you'd find in old Byzantine buildings, but here's the cool part. No human or animal figures. Instead, they're filled with Arabic writing, floral patterns, and images of jewels and crowns. It's like a masterpiece of art that tells a story without showing people or animals. Inscriptions and evolution. Changes over time. Now, as we look closely, a band of Arabic religious inscriptions runs along the octagonal arcade of the Dome of the Rock. It's like a story etched in the walls. The dome has seen a lot of changes and fixes over the years. Different Islamic dynasties took turns, giving it a little makeover. During the Crusader period, they put up a wrought iron screen around the sacred rock to keep Christian pilgrims at bay. Later, the Ayyubids switched it to a wooden screen, and guess what? That same screen is still standing today. In the 16th century, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent decided it was time for some flashy updates. He swapped out the old exterior mosaics and brought in colorful ceramic tiles. Talk about a makeover. Moving into the 20th century, the Hashim royals stepped in. They fixed up or replaced worn-out ornaments and even switched the gold covering of the dome with a gold aluminum alloy, keeping it shiny. And here's the mystery that the dome doesn't directly talk about the event that's super connected to it. The Prophet Muhammad's ascension to heaven, also known as the Mirage. Even though some early hints popped up in the 9th century, it wasn't until the 11th century that this became a big theme. So the dome's original purpose and meaning are still a bit unclear. Unique design and purpose of the Dome of the Rock. Surely the Dome of the Rock is a bit different from regular mosques. It doesn't follow the usual layout you'd find in other Islamic religious buildings. It's a bit of an architectural puzzle. But here's the big mystery. Why was the Dome of the Rock built in the first place? This question puzzles scholars and visitors alike. The dome has some features that make it stand out and seem like it's saying, hey, Islam is the real deal in the Abrahamic tradition. Now let's take a look at the Arabic inscriptions on the dome. These inscriptions boldly affirm the oneness of God and reject Christian ideas like the Trinity and the divinity of Jesus. It's like the dome is making a statement about Islamic beliefs. Also, here's another interesting point. The dome looks a bit like a Byzantine religious building called martyria. These were circular or polygonal shrines honoring saints or remembering important religious events. So was the dome meant to compete with the grandeur of Jerusalem's Christian holy sites, especially the Church of the Holy Sepulchre? For this thing, some people go even further with a bold claim. They say that Abd al-Malik, the Umayyad caliph who built the dome, wanted to replace the Kaaba with it. And the reason behind this is the idea to shift the Muslim pilgrimage, the Hajj, from Mecca to Jerusalem. But hold on, this theory has faced challenges from modern scholars. They argue that the sources promoting this idea are biased against the Umayyads, and evidence shows that Mecca remained the destination for the Hajj during the rebellion led by Ibn al-Zubayr. End-of-time symbolism. Now here's another theory about the Dome of the Rock. Some thinkers believe it was built to symbolize something big, the end of time and a connection between the earthly and heavenly realms. The way it's placed, how it looks, and the decorations all fit with Islamic and Byzantine beliefs about the Day of Judgment in heaven. Jumping to a different view, the Jews see the Temple Mount as a spot where the first and second temples once stood. They've got some evidence, too. Besides what's written in their holy books, a giant earthquake shook the Dome of the Rock a while back. That gave archaeologists a chance to dig into its foundations, and guess what? They found materials dating back to the time of the Second Temple. But here's the tricky part. Muslims stand strong in their belief, and so do the Jews. Both sides have their own stories, and neither is ready to budge. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces. Also, the tension around this issue has gotten so intense that every day, Muslims worry that Israelis might decide to launch missiles at the Dome of the Rock. To avoid potential clashes, they limited the access of Jews to the Al-Aqsa compound, especially during their religious events. Challenges and prophecies. Now, here's a tricky question. Will the Jews just sit back and watch as the Dome of the Rock occupies their holy spot, preventing the fulfillment of their messianic prophecies? It's like a big puzzle where cooperation from both sides is crucial. But looking at the ongoing crisis in that area, it seems like cooperation is far from happening. And now, let's pause and think. If the Third Temple isn't built, how will the biblical prophecy of the abomination of desolation be fulfilled? It's a big deal because this prophecy is believed to be a crucial part of the events leading up to the return of the Messiah. Further with that, the Third Temple is a big player in the end-time prophecy. It's like a signal that the end times are just around the corner. Its construction signifies that the Messiah's second coming is on the horizon. But hold on, its destruction or misuse is a different sign. A sign that the Antichrist has shown up and the Great Tribulation is kicked off. The abomination and the end times. So what's this Great Tribulation? It's a period of intense suffering and persecution for the faithful. Some call it the abomination of desolation. This concept comes straight from the Bible, especially the book of Daniel and the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament. In the book of Daniel, the prophet talks about a desolation happening in the temple. Jesus points to this prophecy when talking about the end times. The abomination of desolation is like a symbol of extreme evil and devastation, signaling a major event in eschatology, which is a fancy word for end times theology. Well, this abomination of desolation is a big deal in prophecy. It's all about an event where something disrespectful or blasphemous gets set up in the holy place, creating chaos and distress. Jesus himself spoke about this in the New Testament, warning his followers to stay alert for its signs. Despite all the chaos, many Jews are still holding on to hope that the Third Temple will be rebuilt. They're doing things to show their faith, believing that with the grace of Elohim, their temple will stand again. It's like a sign of fulfilling the prophecy as they believe it should be. Now, the Third Temple isn't just a big deal for the Jews. Christians see it as the place where Jesus will return to reign as the king. Muslims, on the other hand, believe it'll be where the Mahdi, the awaited Redeemer, will bring justice and peace. It's like a symbol of hope for all three Abrahamic religions. But here's the sticky part. The Third Temple is supposed to be built where the Dome of the Rock, a sacred Islamic site, stands. This creates a whole bunch of conflict and controversy. It's like a clash between the importance of different places for different beliefs. This Third Temple question is a big, complex one. It's not just about history and religion, it's also mixed up with politics. It's something that affects the present and the future, not just for individuals, but for everyone, locally and globally. It's a question that pushes us to think deeply and differently. It challenges us to respect and understand other points of view while searching for the truth. So this is all for today's video. How do you feel about this whole issue at the Dome of the Rock? Comment below and subscribe for more.